From 1972, the Olympiad between Orestes and Yukio. And this was an exciting encounter in the French defense. And I think it really is a nice game to finish on. It shows the energy that you should be playing with white. And let's remember, when you gambit, gambits by definition is risky because you're giving something up. No one has claimed that gambits is not risky. And by definition, you are really putting it, hopefully you're going to have the energy to play those gambits through, but it's going to be a very double-edged game often, as this one is. Now, they start off with the French defense, and in this case, they play e5, the move I recommend you play, the advance. And now white keeps his pawn chain all intact. And we saw this at the start of the last game, both sides developing normally. Queen b6 is played to pressurize this pawn here. Bishop d3, the best square for our bishop. Bishop d7, and now castles. Pawn takes d4, and now the old variation here. And again, this is how theory develops. This is going back 50 years. The modern development here is Rook e1, as we discuss in that course over on Chessable, where you actually want to get this kind of position where we take the knight here, but we keep an extra pair of pieces on the board, and we're getting a little bit of extra quick moves in. The rook is on e1, the knight comes here, and this gives us some great chances. When you're attacking, you generally want to keep pieces on the board because that gives you more ammunition to attack. The time that doesn't always call true is when your opponent has a key defensive piece. In those situations, you want to get rid of that key defensive piece and make exchanges. But this is what we're kind of aiming for. But rather than playing Rook e1, white played the old main line, which I don't recommend you play. Pawn takes d4. The reason I don't recommend you play this is that after knight takes d4, well, knight d2 is interesting here, but I don't want to exchange pieces. And after knight takes, queen takes, knight c3, this is the old Milner-Barry gambit. I, as black, have always just played a6 to stop a piece coming to b5. This knight coming here is annoying. And I think black's just better here with the queen remaining active over on the king side. And I don't believe white has adequate compensation for this gambit. But if black gets greedy and takes the second pawn, I think white has some fantastic chances. And I would never want to play this position as black because white has all the fun. So first of all, develop a piece and line up against the queen and the king is what was played. And now the queen should probably go all the way back, but in this case, it went back to d6, and this allowed white now to play energetically. Remember, if you want to be a gambit expert, you when you give up the pawn, you've got to play with that energy. You haven't got time to sit back and relax and have your cup of tea. You've got to play like you've had about 20 cups of caffeine. Boom, 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 boom. Put the techno music on in the background. Or maybe a bit of gabba if you really want the beat to increase. And here, knight b5, in we go. Create threats. If there's no checks or captures, create the threats. Throw those pieces in. Now, if this knight is ever captured, we can see that the black king is going to have to misplace itself immediately, and black is not developed. This looks very dangerous. So the queen now goes back to b8, and white doesn't have anything immediate, so he plays an excellent move, bringing in the reinforcements and creating threats. And the main idea here is to bring the bishop to f4, develop the last piece, allow the knight to come to c7. So bishop d6, now covering that square, was played. And this is where white now grabs on d5. In actual fact, the computer says this is not the most accurate move, and the better move is to now take the opportunity to force the issue by taking that bishop, develop with tempo, and after the queen moves, queen g3. And this is a very clever idea to create two threats, one against g7 and the bishop coming to d6. When black won't be at a castle, he can't stop both of those ideas. And even though black is 2 pawns up, his dark squares are now chronically weak, and those chronic pains are going to be to haunt him. The king is too weak here. But queen takes d5 is interesting. Black now takes on h2. Why not? Plays a6, trying to get rid of that knight. there's no time in these positions to retreat. It's so sharp that as soon as we start retreating, black will consolidate, maybe by bringing his knight out and be okay. So we've got to look at ways to create threats rather than retreat. Queen g5 does just that. We're trying to come in and win the rook. Now, black probably should defend this with the king because g6 creates some more dark square weaknesses there. Putting your pawns in one color square, like the light squares, weakens the opposite color squares. In this case, the dark squares. And now g3 at least aims to win that bishop. And if we can win that bishop, it's not all about winning the piece. It's about the dark squared weaknesses. Without that dark squared bishop of blacks, black will really feel the pain on the dark squares. The dark squares, my friend. With the bishop coming into f4, for example. So now black really should take on g3. Had he had played this one with bishop c6 check, he can actually get quite adequate play here, and maybe even better with perfect play. But let's remember, it's always the black king, and it's always harder defending. That's the problem. He plays h6, and this allows white to swing the queen over to a square where it's even more dangerous because now knight d6 is a key point. Black takes on g3, and here you've got to get rid of this knight because that knight coming into the middle of the board with check will be devastating. And now, well, there's a killer blow here, but first of all, white plays bishop f4, and after queen a7, the other reason I wanted to use this example, I wanted to give you a little test to finish this course out with, it's white to play and win. And with the king in the middle, with so many open lines, with the bishop so active and the queen so good, we have 4 pieces attacking. We've got to find a way to break through the defense. How can we break through the defense here? How can we get to the black king? Look for the checks, and if it's a check and capture, that demolishes the pawns that are guarding the king even better. And rook takes e6 is a beautiful demonstration of how to win here. Very crisp tactic. If the bishop takes, well, now black weakens this diagonal, and we can go bishop takes here. And if the bishop blocks, we now bring in our last piece. And if the king goes here, there's always queen c7 checkmate. The game ended with black taking with a pawn, but it was a similar idea. Bishop to g6 check, king d8, and now maybe the check here allows the black king to come to e7, but queen f8 check will force checkmate next move. A nice sparkling way to win the game.